Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you like the stream before we get started. Make sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. Hit the bell so you never miss another video or another stream. But here we are. And we are back. I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting, but it took a little while to get everything set up here. I kind of overshot the time frame where I was going to be able to stream. But either way, we're here 10 minutes late, but that's fine. And we have a lot to talk about. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of people that are going to be chiming in and super chatting. But we had an election today, and I think it's important that we talk about that as well. A little bit before we get started and get into the real meat of this episode of the rep streams, whatever you want to call them, the rep cast, etc. We never really settled on a name for it, but either way, there was an election in Virginia. Now, you had a Republican vacating this state legislature, or not state legislature, state Senate post, who very narrowly won it in 2019. Jen Kiggins, who's now the representative of that congressional district, she vacated the seat. Now, as we know, this seat was open, and Republicans ran a candidate, Kevin Adams, who ended up falling just short. Now, technically, given trends and everything that we know, you see the fact that Kevin Adams still outperformed he outperformed Donald Trump by around 10 points. He ran roughly in line with whatever Glenn Youngkin ended up receiving in this district. But at the end of the day, he still fell short. This could have very well been a hold. It will be up again, obviously, in November. But Republicans still need to get it together, and that's what it shows. You talk about how they really funded this race or didn't even fund this race, and you see the problems at it again, where you see Kevin Adams, this guy couldn't even raise $10,000. He wasn't really getting a whole lot of support. And then you look at his opponent, who over there raised $135,000. Now, technically, you could say it's a moral victory because despite being outspent by this ridiculous amount, likely out-campaigned by a decent amount, that it was such a close race. But either way, it shouldn't come down to this. You shouldn't be getting your candidates outraised by a significant amount. You could say, well, the donor class is becoming more liberal, whatever. Even though that's true, you're going to have a lot of dedicated donors as well that actually get it. That are actually based, even one could say, on pretty much all of the issues. There are those donors that do exist. You shouldn't be able to get by being outspent 30-1. You shouldn't be in any circumstance. You shouldn't be outspent 30-1. And obviously, yes, there was party funding. There was outside spending. I know that. But still, that money, that $100,000, easily would have made the difference in a race where not even 40,000 people voted, and the margin of victory for the Democrat was less than 400 votes, less than 360 votes there. So it does matter. Money still matters in politics, and that's something that people need to understand. And a lot of Republicans didn't get that this cycle. And maybe we need to be getting involved more. We need to be donating directly to candidates. This is true. But still, money does matter. And 2020, you could look at the House, you could say it didn't matter. It didn't matter that Biden outspent Trump. They ran roughly even, despite Biden spending hundreds of millions of more dollars down the stretch. You could also take the fact that, down ballot some races where you have a strong gubernatorial candidate that is well funded, that some of the down ballot races don't exactly matter as much regarding funding. You could look at all of that, and that's true, but still, at the end of the day, money still does matter, and it was a big factor in a lot of House races in 2022, in a lot of Senate races in 2022. You look at the fact that you saw Mastriano get outspent like 41-1. It was absolutely ridiculous, the margin that he got outspent by. And it's like, okay, if he outspent Shapiro 41-1, that's a different race. Doesn't matter how controversial you are. If you have the funding, if you have the mechanics, you're going to be capable of going out there and setting the narrative and winning regardless. It all comes down to mechanics. It comes down to strategy. It comes down to money. And a lot of people will forget about that or lose sight about that, but it's still very true. And we could go from here, but Republicans need to understand that these candidates need to be well funded from the get-go. And we know that Virginia, the GOP has been more competent than other places, and this is true. And it's kind of sad to see them lose this potential pickup, or I guess temporary hold that they could have held. No, the margin was not awful, given the fact it is an empty seat in a district that is probably D plus 10 at the presidential level. But there's so much that has been left off the table by this party for decades upon decades on end. Mainly, we know this. But furthermore, we also have to talk about some other things as well before we get started. Katie Porter is now running for Senate in the state of California. Democrats are likely going to be throwing a lot of money into that potential Senate race. It seems as if Feinstein is going to retire in 2024, and Katie Porter is going to be running for that Senate seat. She's going to just get all of the wine mom donations. And honestly, that's a good thing for Republicans, is that a lot of money is going to be just thrown into places like California yet again for another cycle. It's not like Democrats are exactly perfect with money either. We know this. They spent a lot of money on Marcus Flowers that probably could have been used to retake or at least hold the House. They could have used that money to potentially flip and or hold 5 close seats in the House that could have gone for the Democrats that went Republican at the end of the day. So either way, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Maybe Republicans will have a pickup opportunity in that House race in California, although it is a presidential year, so I think it is less likely. But she didn't exactly get by with flying colors in 2022, which I find that interesting. So beyond that point, there's other things we're going to talk about, mainly what we have in the title here. We're about 7 minutes into the live stream. I want to get to these things before this stream actually starts, because before I get to the super chats, I will say the stream is officially started now in terms of the topics that we're going to be talking about. But I wanted to further elaborate on yesterday's video, which in terms of the view count, because YouTube's been having problems, and it wasn't exactly my fault because it wasn't just my videos that were doing this. There were a lot of people, I think just maybe all YouTubers overall, for like 3 to 4 hours last night, they were not recording a single view of the video. So like the first 3-4 hours, the view counts have been wiped out. It shows it at like 7,000 views. I think it's higher than that, obviously, much higher than that. But YouTube system, it's a little weird. I don't know what had been going on, but I'm assuming it will be fixed eventually. I don't know why. I'm not saying it's intentional because it happened to literally everybody on the platform of YouTube. But either way, hopefully it gets fixed. But that's beside the point. What we do know is that Dan Crenshaw, he is one of the more notorious, outspoken neocons in the United States House of Representatives. He is a total interventionist. He turns a blind eye to the issues that matter, one of them being immigration. He might come up with a one-liner about, he supports reducing illegal immigration or something vague like that. But you know that if amnesty is ever up to a vote, he very well could be one of the first people to vote yes on it. We know that. We do. Dan Crenshaw is somebody who cares a lot about what the left thinks about him, a lot about what they do. And he's basically the reincarnation of John McCain. I called him Eye Patch McCain because he has an eye patch. And so did Tucker Carlson. Of course, not a lot of people were very happy with that remark. You had a lot of very neocon and establishment-minded individuals throwing a temper tantrum because of that, despite the fact, he is basically John McCain and he does have an eye patch. How he got it is irrelevant to the point. He's used that as an excuse to advance military intervention overseas. That in and of itself basically gets rid of his card, in my opinion. He doesn't get to play that card. He's putting more people at risk. He's going to get more people eye patches with his own policies. That's what he's doing. And Crenshaw is somebody overall who has made excuses for intervention in every single conflict. He makes excuses for the Iraq War. He made excuses for getting involved with Iran. He's making excuses for Ukraine. He's a big, staunch supporter of sending foreign aid over to Ukraine. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And we know that. And he was in contention to get a very high-profile post in Congress this cycle for the 118th Congress. And he was going to potentially lead the Homeland Security Committee, which deals with immigration. It deals with being tough on the border. At a time where we have a border crisis, do you want a strong Republican that is a member of the Freedom Caucus in charge of that post? Or would you rather have somebody like Dan Crenshaw, who cares more about what the left thinks about him, who likes to virtue signal all the time, who does nothing but punches right and calls for intervention? He's basically your, reincarnated Bush, McCain type of Republican. And he's been able to be propped up as a rising star over the past few years because of the fact that, we got to go on SNL, he gets all the media spotlight, he wears the eye patch, he's so based, he's so cool. And it's like, no, he's not. He's a neocon. He should not be in Congress, let alone in power in Congress at the head of a committee. He shouldn't be. He should be primaried. He's probably not going to be primaried because of the fact that he has all the money in the world. He has all the donors lined up backing him. And while the grassroots is angry at him, they're not really angry enough. And even if you put up a candidate against him that runs a perfect campaign, their ceiling in that district, realistically speaking, is around probably 35 to 40%, which is higher than it would have been 10 years ago, absolutely, but still not nearly high enough. And this is true. And this is probably one of the districts where you should probably have like 50 primary challengers because it is a runoff, and that might help reduce Crenshaw's total margin of victory in that primary. But either way, Dan Crenshaw was in consideration for this post. He lost out. The Freedom Caucus is winning. The center of gravity within the Republican caucus at large is shifting in favor of the Freedom Caucus, which you have a lot of America First representatives, some of the old Tea Party members, but a lot of them have kind of, I guess you could say, assimilated into Trumpism per se. They've assimilated into just understanding and accepting pretty much all of the Trumpian policies or, issues that have been brought forth during the Trump revolution. You have a couple of people in that caucus who really hadn't. Some of them actually, like Justin Amash, for example, are not even in the Republican Party anymore. But either way, the Freedom Caucus usually has the more based members of Congress. Your, MTGs, even though we know she supported McCarthy, and there's questions there. I'm not happy about that. We could talk about that later. But you have Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs. You have Matt Gaetz there. You have a lot of other people. Some of them are lesser known, but are still pretty solid. People like Mary Miller, although she's gotten a little bit more recognition lately. One of them is Mark Green. And Mark Green is somebody who I wouldn't say he's like super based on all the issues, but he's been a hardliner. He's been solid, pretty good on immigration. And now he's going to lead this committee that was almost led by Dan Crenshaw. And it makes you think, if it wasn't for the holdouts, if it wasn't for the 20 people in the standoff actually taking a stand, making McCarthy cave into demands, shifting the Overton window in Congress, shifting basically the narrative, and getting him to cave into every single possible demand they could cave into, because some of these people were ready to stand off for months. Yet in a few days, they were saying, okay, I'll vote for McCarthy because at least he's caving into our demands. And a lot of them passed in the rules package as well. Now, some of them you could say are more verbal demands, and we could talk about how those are, probably or could maybe not be honored. But even then, he's going to have a lot more pushback and a lot more pressure on him if he doesn't. And we know that. But Dan Crenshaw lost out on this committee. This is the same guy that called the people that waited to get those demands terrorists. He called them terrorists because they wanted Congress to be a little bit more decentralized away from the establishment power. And they got that. That is a massive win. And now you look at all of these RINOs, even some, we have levels to the RINOs. I wouldn't say that Dan Crenshaw is necessarily as much of a RINO, for example, as somebody like Liz Cheney. But somebody like Liz Cheney's not in Congress. He's the next layer of RINO that needs to be peeled back of the RINO onion, per se. And you know what? He lost a lot of power. And that's a very good step in the right direction. And Mark Green is going to lead that committee. And potentially they're going to move to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security. I forgot his name. Was it Mykoris or whatever his last name is? Hard to pronounce last name, but he's done a terrible job. They're potentially going to impeach him. I don't know if it's going to amount to anything because Democrats are not going to vote to remove him in the Senate. But still, it is a massive step in the right direction. And you have at least an ideological wing of the government, ideological chamber that is ruled and controlled by the Freedom Caucus, because they got everything they wanted, because Kevin McCarthy's a loser, he's a pushover, he's a diva, he just wants the gavel, but at least he got the gavel and doesn't have any of the power. Yeah, Mayorkas, that's exactly what it was. But he is the speaker in name only. And you could call him a RINO all you want. You could be mad that a RINO is speaker, but the RINO is also a SINO. He's a speaker in name only. And that is a massive win because the more power is within the individual representatives. We haven't had this in Congress in a very long time. And that is a very good thing. It's more decentralized. You're going to see more potential, like I said, rising stars or people that are just more grassroots. People like Mark Green over people like Dan Crenshaw leading these committees, setting the border agenda, setting the policies. Now, you could say a lot of it's not going to get passed through. Some of it might be performative. It's still important to shift the Overton window. They weren't going to get passed through regardless or anyways because Democrats control the Senate and Biden controls the White House. Now, it's very possible that Republicans retake the Senate in 2024. In fact, if they don't, you might as well quit politics because look at the seats that are available. It's not like there's any seats that they realistically could lose. It's like Texas is the number one seat that they realistically could lose in 2024. Think about that. Florida is theirs. Ohio, West Virginia, Montana should be insta-flips. They should be. Knowing the Republicans, maybe not, but like I said, just based off of the fact that it's a presidential year and some of the other fundamentals that kind of screwed Republicans unexpectedly in 2022 are kind of irrelevant in presidential years. So West Virginia, Montana, Ohio, Democrats know they're not going to hold the Senate. It comes down to them reducing their losses in the Rust Belt or potentially Arizona and Nevada yet again because you have Senate races there, and Arizona is a lot less winnable for them now than it was before Sinema switched to becoming an independent. So that's that. I'm not necessarily going to sit back here and underestimate GOP incompetency. We've done that the past couple of cycles. But just looking at the map, you would be very hard-pressed to convince me that Republicans are not favored to retake the Senate. I will say that much. And I'm sure some people will still disagree. I can't blame people for dooming at this rate. I really can't. But still. And from there, the presidency, that's the thing that matters for 2024. Because if Republicans are going to be able to go out there and they're going to be able to retake the presidency one way or another, I don't know who the nominee is going to be. It's still very possible it's going to be Donald Trump, but we'll still wait and see. It's not a guarantee. Then at that point, they're going to be able to have the Congress in its current form. They potentially could get similar changes going to the Senate. It's very possible that McConnell could get out of there. I guarantee you if Trump is the nominee, he's still going to want McConnell to be gone, which also poses the question that the GOP establishment will do everything they could do to screw Trump over in a general election. And they arguably more members of this did it in 2020 than they did it in 2016. You're likely going to see a lot more of them do it in 2024 as kind of like a power grab shift, trying to, shift the center of gravity back. But still, the House is basically a more based version of what it could have been, even with McCarthy as speaker in name only. The Senate is next. The presidency is another thing. And if they get the presidency, maybe now you'll start to see actual change. maybe now you actually could, because it's easier for individual members to put bills up for a vote. And you could have things like an immigration moratorium, for example, put up to a vote in the House. You could see where certain representatives really would stand. And maybe we'll get a new primary list or a replacement list at some point, but it can shift the Overton window. It absolutely can, which is a good step in the right direction, because we need competent people in power, in places of power, who are willing to do that. And it's little wins like these that add up. Obviously, I'm not going to say that, our country's going to be saved because Mark Green instead of Crenshaw is leading the DHS committee in Congress. But still, is it a massive net positive step in the right direction? Yeah, we got to take this. We got to keep going. There's other committees where we need change in. Hold the line. Don't cave the way that Dan Crenshaw wants you to. Don't listen to him calling you a terrorist and say, we need to cave. No, it worked. It worked to an extent. We already know that a lot was confirmed in the rules package that initially would not have been in there, that basically makes McCarthy, you could say, a lame duck. I say speaker in name only, whatever. And now the speakership and House leadership in general is more meaningless than it initially was. And that is a very good thing. So we'll see what happens moving forward. In terms of 2024, I think it's important that we touch on Biden. I talked about this a little bit in my last stream, but it wasn't really talked about a lot, that Biden's planning to actually announce his 2024 run. The guy's going to be, 82 years old, but he's still the best the Democrats could do. Maybe you could say Newsom. I think it's a 50-50, shot that Newsom would perform better. I mean, the guy's governor of California. California is hated by literally every single swing state. And you look at some of the policies that the guy has actually put into play. I mean, you talk about the fact that he basically legalized knowingly giving other people AIDS. The guy has a policy record that's a train wreck. California, they're not going to care. But even then, he underperformed. He underperformed against a nobody. Got 59%. DeSantis's margin of victory was wider than Newsom's margin of victory. And Florida used to be the, bellwether swing state, whatever. I'm not convinced that Gavin Newsom is somebody that's an electoral juggernaut who would go out there and just run up the score with independent voters. Now, I will say that it's very possible that he could win, given what we saw in 2022. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, compared to Biden, I'm not sure that Democrats have a better option than Biden. He's probably going to throw his hat in the ring regardless, as long as he can walk properly. And I said this from the day that he got in office back in 2021. And I'll say the same thing again. It doesn't matter. He's a figurehead. He's as much as the president as Kevin McCarthy is the Speaker of the House. Let's be real. I mean, he's just a figurehead. And that's pretty much all it is. He gets to appear to be the president. It's mainly the people under him that are running the show, the establishment. They share his values, but he's also just a useful idiot for them, more so than not. And maybe he'll get opposition. If an incumbent president runs, he's not going to get serious opposition. It's possible he gets a Nina Turner type running against him. AOC's not going to do it as long as she's in Congress, but let's say you do get one of these leftist LARPers, and I'd say Antifa adjacent people, the Antifa candidate, the people those people would vote for, and apparent neoliberal type of individual that's going to be up there and running against Biden. Honestly, they're going to get 15% max in the primary. That's literally about it. Biden is the Democrats' best bet, and he's probably going to run, and he's probably going to win the nomination. And that's pretty much it. Now, is he going to win the general? Depends. Republicans are a divided party right now. That never bodes well for a general election. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that what the political climate now, as it exists today, is going to be the same political climate of 2 years from now. Just like the same political climate of 2021 was not the same political climate as 2022. Maybe in some cases it was, but Republicans don't know how to actually play to win elections, and they underperformed. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, Biden is probably going to run. Now, he also was harboring classified documents. They found several classified documents at, let's just say not the White House, that Biden allegedly took with him. And now we know that it's like these same people wanted Trump to be in prison over having classified documents. Biden has serious classified documents that have to deal with Iran, that have to deal with Ukraine. I believe back when he was vice president, I could be wrong about that, but still, this guy has classified documents. He gets away with it. He gets away with it just fine. Donald Trump, they want to throw him in prison for it, despite the fact this is a common occurrence. And what it comes down to is if you are a part of the club or if you are not a part of the club. Joe Biden is a part of the club. He's a part of the establishment. That's pretty much it. He's going to get a pass regardless, as much as we complain about it, as much as we whine about it. No, he's going to get a pass regardless. Donald Trump is not. And these people set the narrative, and as a result, they get everything they want. Doesn't matter what Biden does. It doesn't matter what any of these other people do. Doesn't matter how brain dead John Fetterman may be. It doesn't matter how bad of a candidate that Katie Hobbs is. They're still going to find a way. They're going to find a way, whether it's money or other means. They're going to find a way to get these people in power. They're going to cover for them. That's what the media does. That's what they do. And Biden is not going to lose a lot of popularity because of this. He might lose some, but not really enough to make a difference. Maybe like part of 1% or so, not even. I'm not saying that Biden's presidency as a whole hasn't caused him to dip or that he's always going to be above a certain point, but at the same time, he's always going to be above a certain point. Part of that is polarization. Is not going to always be above 50, but is it going to be always above 40, regardless of how bad the economy is? Absolutely, because they will do everything they can do to cover for their boy. And don't underestimate the ignorance of the average normie voter in this country. They may not have bad intentions. They may not. We're going to need these people to take power as well. But at the end of the day, they are going to be fooled by the current establishment, by the media. This is a problem. Of course, they're going to say, well, Biden had less classified documents than... It doesn't matter. He had classified documents that were arguably far more important and more of a national conflict of interest than Trump's. But it doesn't matter to these people. It's not going to. And it's sad, but that's the way that it goes. So I think it's about time we get to Super Chats. We're almost 30 minutes into the show, and we'll go from there. But I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. So let's pull up the Super Chats real quick, and we will go from there. So let's see. We're waiting. Okay. Here we go. Shout out to Sean Jaramillo for the 2. Funtime Freddy 420 says, hey, Rep, just wanted to ask why you throw around the term RINO so much. I feel like RINO should be reserved for the Cheneys and the Romneys of the world. Well, it's a blanket term, and it resonates well with people. Personally, I hate the word, and this will surprise people. But I'm not the biggest fan of the word RINO because it's honestly a misnomer. Because a lot of Republicans in power are actually RINOs, but they're establishment Republicans. RINO is kind of like some people might say a slur or just a blanket term thrown out there, but it resonates with people and it makes sense. And it's true. And people will point to things like voting record, but there's reasons why voting record is necessarily flawed. When push comes to shove, are these going to be the people that are capable of saving this country, or will they bend the knee at the end of the day and serve the same establishment? We know that they're going to bend the knee and serve the same establishment. They're uniparty. Kevin McCarthy might vote the right way on the votes that are brought to the floor like 93% of the time. Also, who controls what votes are brought to the floor? 1. 2, you have to understand that who exactly does he fund in these primaries? Like the actual RINOs, like you mentioned. He'll support them over America First candidates. Now he has less power, which is a good thing. So we'll see if anything changes. But either way, that's kind of why I throw it around. It's not necessarily that, oh, they all are fake on every single issue. It's much deeper than that. And it's just a term that resonates well with people. Crenshaw, I consider a neocon, more so than, oh, he's a total RINO, but a lot of neocons are RINOs at the end of the day, given the center of gravity shift within the Republican Party. Absolutely. And Lifo Foley says we're making progress infiltrating the leadership. It's true. It's slow. It's not going to happen overnight, but is it happening? Yes, it is. Absolutely. Buck Hunter 431 says, will you do a freshman governor's tier list? Probably not. We really didn't get that many of them. But maybe. I don't know. I think we're going to do an upgraded tier list for all senators in a few months, all governors, all, I wouldn't say House representatives, but maybe like the most notable ones, like the top 50 highest name recognition House reps. If somebody wants to like make that template for the tier list, I'll probably do it. But I'm not going to rank all 435 members of Congress. I'm not going to rank all 222 Republican members either. That's just too much work for obvious reasons. Real Texan Politics says Crenshaw, Mason, Gonzalez should be our 3 biggest priorities next year. Yeah, and of course a lot of the neocons or like the electabros will say, you can't touch Gonzalez, but his district, to my knowledge, has gotten a lot more Republican. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it has. And as for Crenshaw, yeah, he's a target. Mace is a huge target. There is no reason. Talk about somebody who's an actual RINO on literally every single issue for the most part. Nancy Mace fits that bill. She's a train wreck, and the fact she survived this time is not something that is really that great. But hopefully somebody better than Arrington will run against her. But you also need people that are funded well. They're able to get funding. Like Russell Fry, who was decent, and primaried out Tom Rice. He was a very prominent member of the South Carolina State House. He was able to have connections to be able to get those donations. So the fact that he, was running up against an impeachment Republican, that definitely helped him. But he had a lot of money and resources to combat Rice's more so than somebody like Arrington had to combat Mace's. And this is true, and a lot of people don't take this into account. This stuff matters. Like, we need good people occupying power at the local and state level, so they're going to be ready to go out there. Like, I like the idea of outsiders saving us. Definitely with Trump, that idea became even a little bit more popular, but still, it's like, we need people in the working, I wouldn't say necessarily like the establishment, but we need people that are able to use the establishment. We need people that are able to get into power and network with people and get donors on their side. So we actually are capable of having a fully America First Congress. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen at a certain point. It does. And this is true. I like the grassroots aesthetic. I do. But if we're going to be outspent 41-1 in swing state gubernatorial elections, and we're going to be losing by 15, we need to rework our strategy. We do. Absolutely. Connections have to be made. Compromises necessarily don't. But still, that's how we actually get our people into power. That's how we shift the Overton window in Congress and our state legislatures, which arguably matter more than taking back Congress because of the fact that a lot of policy that impacts us happens at the state and local level. For example, we talked about it a couple streams ago, what Louisiana's doing to combat the pornography epidemic, putting in these filters. Obviously, yes, you could say, well, there's a use of VPN, whatever. It's still an important step in the right direction. Could prevent people from seeing content they shouldn't be seeing for at least a couple years on average, and that buys time, and that's still important. So absolutely, the state level definitely can control areas of policy that need to be controlled, and you can mold states into being more culturally conservative. DeSantis, to a certain extent, has done this down in the state of Florida. It's worked well. To a certain extent. Obviously, I'd like to see a little bit more get done than that. I think that we could demand more. Obviously, we should from our leaders, especially if we are commentators, if we're in the culture more so than in like the hyper political aspect of things. Absolutely, but that's the way it works. All right. Polite Rude Guy says, I might run for a House seat in San Antonio. Well, that kind of ties into what we're talking about here. You absolutely should. We need people running for positions at the local level, the county level, the state level, state legislatures, for example. Like, all of this matters. Get in there with your state party. Network with people. There are state parties that have a lot of based people in it. Even some of these conventions that we've seen. Virginia, even to an extent, like you got Youngkin over somebody like Cox, who probably would have lost, by the way, and was just a, much more of like a RINO, an awful candidate. We know that. We do. And you need people that can get into power and really change the conversation, bring different issues to the forefront that need to be brought up, and go from there. Johnny Heartdog says, I'm very discouraged about what's going on in this country. How about doing a white pill video to cheer me up? Surely there's got to be a good news. Well, thanks for the super chat. I did a video that was a white pill video. I did one yesterday. And this video, this stream to an extent, we're talking about the white pills, and we're obviously talking about some things that we need to work on, what we could do for strategy, what we need to do to change the conversation within the GOP as well. So Olivia Williams says, I think you need to give people a reason to vote for Trump and not just because DeSantis would do the same thing. I'm Team Trump, but worried. Well, Trump's already been president. And we know that there have been a lot of bad actors that were in his circle that are not exactly going to be in his circle now. It doesn't mean that his circle is going to be perfect. He does have a lot of bad actors that still are trying to get in there. But the fact is, you have a guy who feels screwed, who's going to go on a revenge tour if he's in power, and you know that he's going to do so. That in and of itself, I think, is the biggest reason to vote for Trump. He could do whatever he wants for 4 years. There's a very good chance that if he wins, he takes the House with him. He has the Senate with him. He's got a trifecta again, and the trifecta is going to have much less RINOs in it now than it did before. So I guess that would be the biggest reason in favor of Trump in a primary. What will happen in the primary, I don't know. Doesn't mean that Trump is not flawed in many aspects. It doesn't mean, that you're not going to see a competitive primary. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Does DeSantis even run? I think he does at this point. I think he sees an opportunity. I think he takes it. Trump doesn't really get a lot of media coverage right now. And that's not going to work out to his advantage, regardless if you support him or not, which I do, by the way. But I understand that it's going to be an uphill climb, especially because the GOP establishment can learn from their mistakes that they used to try to stop him back in 2016. And either way, if you have a divided party, it's going to be a total disaster ahead of 2024. But we're not there yet. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that are going on in politics until then. And I'm sure we'll get into the 2024 conversation here and there and a lot more into it later this year. But I don't know. 564 viewers in chat. Please like the stream down below. Like that stream. If you have any questions, feel free to super chat. We're not done reading them here. We have more. Olivia Williams says, ideal speaker after McCarthy who can get the votes. I don't know. I really don't know. I think you'd have to look at some of the options that were put up this cycle. The Biggs. You saw Biggs put up. You saw Donalds. You saw Jordan as well. All of these people would be massive, massive upgrades over the current leadership. They would be. And now they have a lot more power. All individual representatives do, because of the fact that Kevin McCarthy is speaker in name only. He caved. He caved to the Freedom Caucus. And this is exactly why we need to keep putting pressure on these people. Even if they're doing the right thing to a certain extent, keep putting the pressure on these people. There's no reason why we can't demand more, including from Donald Trump, by the way, including from Trump, including from people that actually get it to a large degree. Because there needs to be pressure there that they actually do the right thing and not cave into the media or cave into the left or whatever. Trump is not exactly perfect. Same thing goes for Ron DeSantis. The only difference is if I criticize Donald Trump, the DeSantis heads are just going to be like, well, you still support him. Your criticism doesn't matter. You're a cultist. And if I say anything bad about Ron DeSantis, that I'm literally evil and I'm a cultist, I'm a Blumph cultist. It's like these people, to a large degree, that are a part of the DeSantis side that are just so annoying. Not all the DeSantis people are like this, but a lot of people that support DeSantis, mainly on Twitter, are. They're just annoying. They're insufferable. They're not even ideologically consistent. They will get on my case about 2022 predictions, but they thought Republicans were going to do far better than I thought Republicans were going to do. And then they block me, and then I block them, and then they say that I blocked them first, and it's not even true, but they're just bad faith actors, and we know that. And they're not really worth our time, but it's important to understand that a lot of people that are just for DeSantis have this newfound Trump derangement syndrome. Not all of them. I think that there are arguments in favor that we could discuss. Not saying I agree with all of them, but there's a lot of bad faith people supporting DeSantis. And I think that's the number one thing that I think is going to keep a lot of people in a primary skeptical of him, regardless if they like him as a governor or not, because I do. And then I'll get all these people that say, why do you hate DeSantis? I don't hate DeSantis. He's a very effective governor of a swing state that basically helped turn it red. But at the end of the day, it's like, this guy is not Trump necessarily from 2016. He's not even Trump now, one could say. He's effective in certain means, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to go in there and be a very effective president overnight. It just doesn't. So what can I say? All right, next super chat. AK Thirst says, my House Representative Andy Ogles from Tennessee's 5th was one of the gang of 20 MAGA Republicans. I'm glad I voted for him. He was very good, and I'm very glad he won the primary. Was not able to stream that night. It was like on a Thursday or some weird primary night back in 2022. But Tennessee, I think it was only Tennessee that had their primaries that night. But no, it's so true. And he's done a very good job. And he's going to be another one of those underrated good representatives. You can guarantee that much. So let's see here. Lions 1956 says, where did you go to college? What's your degree? My degree is in political science. Now, where did I go to college? I don't really feel the need to give that out. But it's not like I really used the degree. I learned a lot more just doing this channel than I actually learned in college. I didn't learn anything. I'm not saying that people shouldn't go to college. I think that some people should go to college. I think that obviously you need people that are going to be able to occupy power structures. And I think that college is a good, means or stepping stone if you're actually going to learn something. What are you going to do with your life? Are you going to become an attorney? You have the potential to be a doctor, whatever, even if you're going to be high up in business. It helps. It really does. But some people that I guess, are going to get a degree they're not going to use, and they're going to go into debt for it. It's like at that point, you're probably better off doing a trade or doing something else, because you could learn a lot of the things you're going to learn in college on the internet for free or read books. Now, thankfully, I don't have any debt, and I still might go to higher education, might go to law school, probably will at some point, not this year. But it's like at the end of the day, I learned a lot just from learning myself, learning on the internet, reading books about politics, just doing this. I learned more from you guys in the live chat by far than I've learned in the 4 years I had college. So take that as you will. But let's see. All right, Callan Shaw, Indie Games has ranked these three as potential 2024 POTUS candidates: Bolton, McCarthy, Youngkin. Youngkin by far would be the best of those three. Decent governor for Virginia. He acts like he's governor of Kansas or Nebraska, but he represents a Biden plus 10 state. That's a good thing. And I hear he's far more based behind the scenes and has actually been effective. And the state party's gotten better when he's been in power. I'm not going to tolerate a lot of Youngkin counter-signaling. There have been legitimate criticisms. I've legitimately criticized him, but he's been an effective executive for Virginia. He deserves props for that. He really does. Let's see. McCarthy's better than Bolton, though. I will say that. Bolton, he's like supports Biden or something and might run in a primary and get 1% in 2024. McCarthy, again, he's weak, but I'll take him over Bolton. Those two would not win a presidential election if they were the nominee, by the way. So, John Waffle, H2 Pieces, where can MAGA win in Virginia? Probably swing districts, the rural areas, etc. Like I said, I think Youngkin's the best bet of the furthest right governor that you could potentially get in Virginia. I will say that. That doesn't mean I want him as president. Like a lot of people think that, oh, this guy won a state, he won a governorship, he deserves to be elevated to the presidency. It's like, no. But if he's VP, I wouldn't complain, given a lot of what I learned about him recently. But no, he has that dog in him. You know, what can I say? He's been going out there and he's been getting things done for the most part for what he actually can get done in Virginia. You know, proposing the 15-week abortion ban, cutting the bureaucracy significantly, banning CRT, just going down the list, keeping his campaign promises. He's an effective state-level executive of a state that Biden won by 10 points. He deserves props for that. Doesn't necessarily mean I think he's going to save this country or that he should be president. Same thing arguably could be said for DeSantis. Let's see. Christopher Laurie, good question, by the way. I have an answer to this one. Says, this year, would you do more documentaries like the South Carolina one you did? Maybe later this month. Now, I don't know if they're going to be as long. I don't know if they're going to be 30 minutes each, but there's going to be more documentary-style videos this year. I'm probably going to be making less videos because politics is less hectic overall. So they're going to be higher quality, and that means you're going to see more high-effort videos like that come into play. So absolutely. 100%. Let's see. Charles Turner Jr. says, those of us in red states should help keep our states more red, undesirable to the left, and strengthen the culture. I'm glad you rated the Idaho GOP as one of the better ones. We can keep things going strong at the state and local level. Absolutely. And they primaried out the weak AG. They didn't quite get the governorship in the primary, but you saw a big defection in the third party to a more conservative choice, and you saw state senators get primaried out by the grassroots en masse, and a lot of them obviously won in the general. So you're seeing the changes take place in places like Idaho, and that's a very good thing. And it starts in those deep red states. And maybe there is something to the fact that we shouldn't spend all of our ammunition, our best candidates we potentially could run in these swing states. Maybe there's something to it. We need effective people there, obviously. But maybe we put the DeSantis-type people in like these toss-up states, that in like the lean, likely states, we put like our Vances and et cetera. And then from there we go just, you could say, the best people we possibly could get in a place like Idaho and put a lot of our energy and our money into a race like that. Absolutely. 100%. Olivia Williams says, best option in Michigan Senate right now, same in IND, I believe it's Indiana. Honestly, it might be Banks in Indiana. Michigan Senate race is going to be screwed. John James might honestly be the best option, but he's not going to throw his hat in the ring to lose a third time. So I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, people are going to float Huzanga. He's kind of weak. I don't know. I'm very torn on that prospect. I don't want to put full-on RINOs up either. You have Rufus over there saying, oh, Peter Meyer. Peter Meyer would get destroyed in the primary. He's not going to get any support in the general. He would have lost his House seat had he won the primary this cycle. I'm not going to play that game at that point. Like, I understand the necessity of getting somebody who can get the money to go out there and win. Peter Meyer, first of all, couldn't even win a primary with the money. First of all. Second of all, he's a total liberal. He works at Meyer now, probably, thank God. Third of all, we can get somebody better in there. Like, at that point, you might as well put Rick Snyder in there. And I don't want Rick Snyder in there because he is a RINO as well. But still, we have to be smart about who we're nominating. That's true. But we don't necessarily want to put up these pushover weak individuals either. And that's the wrong message a lot of people are taking. The presidential ticket and the Senate ticket are going to run in line with each other for the most part, especially if Trump is your nominee. If DeSantis is your nominee, you might even see Democrats do better down ballot in the Rust Belt, even if they do worse in like the Sun Belt, for example. David Fallow, thanks for the super chat. Benson X says, is Rick Scott running again? Donald should run for his seat. If he is not, I think he will. He's going to win by a lot more than like one vote because he wins every election by like one vote or so. Not actually, but by like very, very slim margins, even in like red wave years or blue wave years. He knows how to win by a point, not even. Lee Friend says Trump is the better candidate because he can pick up more white union workers, unlike a more traditional Republican like DeSantis. This is true. I mean, DeSantis is not guaranteed to win over or Trump, Biden, or Romney, Clinton voters in these Sunbelt states. He's not. He could. I think he'd do better among those voters than Trump. But in terms of the Rust Belt, is he going to get those voters in Macomb County to vote for him in droves? Oh, but he lived there for a couple years. I don't care. Mitt Romney lived in Oakland County, Michigan. He didn't even come close to taking the state. So, yeah, it does matter. Turnout does matter. And if Ron DeSantis is the nominee, I would be very worried about a state like Wisconsin even. And the real question for electability is Trump more likely to win Pennsylvania, where he won in 2016. 2020 was extremely close. Biden's popularity there has dipped since then, even if you want to argue Trump's has as well. Is DeSantis more likely to win Wisconsin than Trump is to win Pennsylvania? And given how Republicans have done in Wisconsin when Trump's not on the ballot, I'm not entirely sure I could say with confidence that's the case. It's possible that DeSantis could win Wisconsin, especially given trends, but that's the real question. I don't know if I could say that DeSantis is more likely to win Wisconsin than Trump is to win Pennsylvania. I'm not even saying Trump will win Pennsylvania. So what does that exactly say about DeSantis' chances? Especially with a lot of bitter only Trumpers in the primary, which you could argue that they have less impact now, or that they might be more willing to swallow, and stomach voting for DeSantis than somebody like Nikki Haley or one of these other people. But still, this does matter 100%. And that doesn't even take charisma into account, how you would operate on the stage at the national level. Because the guy, arguably lost a debate to Andrew Gillum and then didn't really beat Charlie Crist in the debate that much. He won the election, because the debates are not the only thing that matters. But, I mean, let's be real here. He's not a charismatic guy. He comes off as a robotic politician, and that doesn't play out well in those places, whether you like him or not, whether you think he's done a good job or not, which I think he's done a decent job as governor. But it's a lot easier to win as an incumbent governor than it is to win the presidency. I mean, Kim Reynolds won by 17 in Iowa. It's more than Trump won it by. Nobody's really trying to prop her up for the presidency, but, although a lot of people are saying she'd be a good VP, and I think she would be a good VP. I think DeSantis would be a great VP for Trump. The problem is they live in the same state. You can't have that happen without forfeiting Florida's electoral votes, and that is a red state in pretty much every stretch of the term. And if it's not, you're losing a bunch of other states, and you're not winning an election either. So exactly, says nobody is mentioning how the CLF is only going to stay out of safe red seats. This wouldn't have saved Caroline Leavitt, as the district was not safe. I know. And it's not perfect, but is it a net positive? Yes, it is. It's a net positive. Now, watch them pay off Cook Political Report to say that a Trump plus 35 district is likely ours, so they could start donating there. I shouldn't be giving them these ideas, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. That's just going to make a lot of people angry, though. Life Foley says Florida's the new Texas. One could say Texas is the new Florida as well. And that's not really that great of a thing, in my opinion. But it is true. Florida is a state Republicans are going to be able to win by a ridiculous margin in the raw vote. It's very possible Republicans start doing better in New York and California, and potentially still holding their margin in Texas. So could Republicans actually be winning the popular vote while losing the Electoral College in 2024? I think with DeSantis, that's a possibility. It is. I'm not saying it's guaranteed or it's a big possibility, but I think DeSantis is more likely to have that happen than the inverse, one could say. I'm just saying. I think that if he wins the popular vote, though, he'll win the Electoral College, but the chance is non-zero. And I'd say the same thing about somebody like Rubio against Clinton back in 2016. So the people need to understand it's not about the popular vote per se. It's about the popular vote in these swing states. and those electoral votes within them matter. Obviously, Pennsylvania matters a lot more than Nevada. So we'll see. Now we have more super chats to get to, and I'm going to get to them. And we're currently 54 minutes into the live stream. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to keep reading these super chats here, but I think it's been a good stream so far. Thank you guys for sticking with the stream tonight. Like the stream. Make sure you do that, and subscribe if you haven't yet. You have to subscribe to use the live chat. No freeloaders here. We know. And if you do and you still can't chat, just, refresh or go out on the app and back in. You'll be able to. So let's see. Let's see what we have here. Okay. David Falla says, for the life of me, I don't understand why I see fellow pro-lifers supporting DeSantis when Trump literally gave us the judges that got rid of Roe. Yeah, I mean, that is kind of a mandate that he has now. His statement that he made, like I said, I don't think it was as bad as people made it out to be, but the optics of it were not ideal regarding the whole pro-life issue. He kind of came off a little bit harsh when, even though he was right to a certain extent, how you campaign is different than how you govern, especially in such a morally bankrupt society that we have. Either way, there was no reason for him to really go out there and say that, and whatever. So, let's see. Lions 1956 said, did you go to MSU, Michigan, CMU, EMU? Who says I went to college in Michigan? Like, I know I'm from there, but who said I went to college in the state of Michigan? Yeah, you're not gonna figure it out very easily. Life O'Foley says, why did we make gains with rural black voters, mostly in the South? It's not that we made gains with them, it's that they just didn't show up. They don't really show up as much during midterm years. Just like white working class voters in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin didn't show up in midterm years. It's true. Irma Gersh says, thoughts on Beth Van Dyne, my rep in Grapevine. I go back and forth with her. She's never MAGA. She is basically a representative that you could say would do a good job representing like a D+2 district. Her district's a lot redder now, and I don't think that she's exactly that great. A lot of people want to prop her up to run for Cruz's seat. If Cruz retires, steps down, whatever, even though he said he's going to run, doesn't always mean he's going to. So I don't know. She seems very mid as a representative, very mid representative overall. I think that probably you could have somebody better in that seat, but you're not going to primary her out realistically. She's going to be an institution. You could just hope that because her district is a lot redder now, that she's going to be voting a lot redder, or at least will have a different viewpoint on certain policies, at least to bring forth to the table. I'm not sure. Nick H. says, Rufus says DeSantis is going to outperform 2016 Trump in Chester and Delaware County. I disagree. Oz was supposed to be that guy this cycle who would do that. People, I mean, to a certain extent myself, I said that he would. A lot of people said he would. He didn't. He got like a point better in the suburbs. And people are going to say that's on Trump, but Oz had nothing in common with Donald Trump for the most part, policy-wise. Oz even took Trump's endorsement of him off the website in the general election, or at least, demoted it to a lesser-known section. And it's like, it doesn't matter whether you're a Trump conservative or like a weak conservative or like a liberal Republican, or I guess you would say a liberal Republican with MAGA tendencies or whatever. I think Oz was definitely, I think he came around to, being more conservative than he initially was 5 to 10 years ago. We know that, but still, Republicans did not feel enthused to show up for him. The Trump base didn't. It didn't matter whether Trump supported him or not. And yes, Mastriano, not having any money, got decked. That technically, I guess, was the top of the ticket after all. I stand corrected. But Oz underperformed vastly, lost by 5. You can't even blame this on this, certain stuff. He got decked. He got drilled. Wasn't even close. Polls were wrong the other way. Worse than 2016. And we didn't see it coming. But now we can adjust. I will say that I think the polling errors are going to go back to 2020, 2016 form in 2024 to an extent, but we're not going to take that for granted. I think there's many other metrics we could look into, but presidential years and midterm years are just different, I guess. And any leftist wishcaster who claimed that before the election was proven correctly. So whatever. The show goes on, and we will continue. Nick H sent 2 more super chats. Do I think Trump 2024 is the same populist appeal that 2016 Trump did? To an extent, I think you could argue that it will come back to a degree because he is slighted again by the GOP establishment as well as the left. But I think that the same energy and the same appeal is not the same. It's not going to be the same. It might be better than 2020. We're not going to get 2016 back. That was special. And maybe we'll get it back on steroids with somebody else in the future. But I don't know if Trump 2024 is going to bring the same exact fire. He's not the same guy. I mean, you'll have a quarterback who puts up really big numbers and wins the Super Bowl, and maybe they'll be able to get another one later on. I mean, Peyton Manning did this in his career, but I mean, it's just not the same. You might be able to get by, you might be able to make it happen, but it's not, you're not going to have the same season, the same numbers. And I think it's very similar to that. Also, how bad do you think the Dem trifecta in Michigan will hurt us long term? Probably a decent amount, although Republicans did have a trifecta there. But, I mean, Republicans just cave and Democrats don't. That's the difference. So I really don't know what's going to happen. I don't have high hopes for the state of Michigan. I don't. Polite Rude Guy says Trump gained 12 million voters. He will gain again in 24 and win again. Even with nonsense, won't be enough to take him down. I mean, it possibly gains votes overall if turnout increases. Yeah, it's possible. I hope he can. I hope he will. But we'll have to see. We're a long way away from 2024. We don't know how turnout's going to look in the slightest. Christopher Laurie says, to be honest, I kind of hope more GOP candidates run in 24 because I think Trump would do better with competition. He would. Especially in a primary. If it's like him and DeSantis, he might go down. He might, especially the way conservative media has been treating him and the way that they've been propping up DeSantis. If it's him, DeSantis, Pence, and a bunch of others, yeah, he might get by with 40%. Absolutely. Now, I will say this. Conservative media was very anti-Trump to begin with. Trump was able to get by off the mainstream free press he would get by stirring controversy. Now, he can stir controversy to a certain extent, but even then they're going to turn a blind eye to it for the most part. They don't mention him now. They mention him very little. Even compared to a year ago, they mention him little. And he'll be shafted. And the conservative media grifted off of Donald Trump's name. They propped him up during his presidency, defended him from the left. And as a result, they got in his good graces, and they got in the good graces of the base. And now they get to turn against him, shill for whoever his opponents are, and more of the base now is going to listen to them more so than not. Even Breitbart, which actually was pro-Trump, early on in 2016, even 2015, they were his newspaper, basically, his website. They've, been under new leadership. They're turning against him to a large degree, and then it's okay now. Apparently, it really seems as if they're going to be able to have more pull, one could say. And they played the Trump base very well during his presidency. And it's true. And as a result, they're going to be able to prop up other candidates more easily, whether you think they're being malicious or not. And they get to control the narrative within the base. They have a lot more of an impact on the primary now than they had initially when they were never Trump or anti-Trump, because they got to become pro-Trump, they got acquainted with the base, now they have more control over what the base thinks and the way the base believes. And you could bet that a lot of people that voted for Cruz or Rubio or even Jeb Bush for those in the first few states in the primaries probably going to vote for DeSantis or even somebody that's more establishment friendly overall. And in terms of Trump, even his original supporters feel disillusioned with him, and he's going to have to win them back. I think he could. I think he very well could, because he was the face of the party for so long. He still is to a large degree, even if he's less prominent or in the media now than he used to be. And he still has a lot of work to do. He can't take it for granted. And I say this as somebody who backs him. You got to bring the energy, bring the fire, have your wits about you, and don't take it for granted and focus on the right issues. If he's able to do that, he could prove all of the doubters wrong. He could prove, the well-meaning DeSantis supporters wrong, get them on board. DeSantis may not even run. But still, there's going to be a lot that's going to be happening between now and then. And we'll be here for it. I'm here for it. It's good content. It's good entertainment. But we'll have to see. I always say we have to wait and see about pretty much everything on this channel. But it is true. All right, let's see. Anti-Piracy Leaks' electoral analysis channels try not to add the state of every time they mention a state challenge, difficulty impossible. I mean, it's true. Like, what do you want me to say? Like the state of Arizona, the state of Michigan. I mean, I feel like it's because we watch a lot of like other like election content, like CNN, Fox News back in like 2016. We see them announce it as like the state of Wisconsin, 51-49, etc. It's like, I guess it kind of ties into that. I don't know, but it's like you like to draw things out. The state of Michigan, the state of Pennsylvania. It just feels better to say that Michigan or Pennsylvania. Like, that just sounds weak. It sounds honestly beta. But if I say the state of Michigan, I'm like commanding you to focus on the state of Michigan. I don't know. Maybe I'm coping about it, whatever. Charles Turner Jr. says, I don't buy that Arizona's blue. The GOP needs to get their act together. Yeah, I mean, I was there. It just doesn't feel like a blue state or even like a swing state, like even in Maricopa County. But there are a lot of homeless people, though. You could tell it's changing. It's liberalizing. New Mexico is puzzling as they have a lot of energy jobs, so why aren't they red too, especially if Hispanics are voting red more? Well, because they're not voting red enough, and the whites are starting to vote blue, so that kind of more than offsets it. And even though they have a lot of energy jobs, probably like 10% work in energy, they've been voting red anyways. Like, I mean, it's kind of deeper than that. David Fallow says, Trump was kind of right. As much as I want abortion to be illegal completely, the vast majority of people at least support abortion in cases of rape. I'm assuming you also mean incest and things like that as well. I mean, it is true. You can't campaign the way you govern. Trump didn't campaign on, being like, I'm going to ban abortion nationally. He said, I'll appoint pro-life justices, judges. And what happened? He got abortion banned in like 15 states as a result because of that. The way you campaign and the issues you focus on don't always have to be the way that you govern. And this is true. And people might get mad at that and say that's caving. It's not caving. It's actually being smart and getting things done and actually making sure that less unborn children are killed in the womb every year. So that's the way it works. Now we have to shift the Overton window. But if you're going to go out there and say all these things that might actually be true and should, obviously I think all abortion except life of the mother should be banned. No exceptions except obviously life of the mother. If you say that and you say all these, rhetorically, all these things that are going to be blasted in the media against you on that issue, what's going to happen exactly? Well, you're going to lose. The very pro-abortion people are going to get into power. And what's going to happen? You're going to have more abortions than ever. So you're going to have Roe v. Wade codified into federal law. It's never going to change. And as a result, you completely have ceded that issue to the left. And you're going to have this genocide of the unborn continue for decades upon decades, if not even centuries to come, if our country even makes it that long, which at that point it probably wouldn't. So be smart about it. Don't cave, but focus on the certain issues that are winning issues, and you'll get into power. Let the people in the culture, let the talking heads shift the Overton window. I guess you would say, do that. And obviously there are people in Congress that can do it as well. You have your GOSARs, you have your caucus. Obviously that should shift the center of gravity. It should. And it's true, your average Republican 20, 30 years ago, like they were just a total run-of-the-mill neocon. They were a shill for Bush. And now, like, you have like 5 people that are like that same caliber or quality. Like if you shift the Overton window, you get control of the institutions, which is what we need to do, and we actually subtly introduce our ideas, we're never going to lose our power grip because we're a lot more competent and capable than our opposition. It's true. So keep that in mind. I'm just telling it like it is. Like Trump was not entirely wrong in that, but at the same time, you also don't want to look like you're punching right either. McConnell had a far more impact on that election, and McCarthy, which Trump supports, than abortion. It's just worth it not to say anything. Now, did comments by Mastriano and Dixon that were controversial lower their margin of victory? Probably to a certain, or margin of defeat. Probably or I guess you would say raise their margin of defeat. Probably to a certain degree. I wouldn't say it was like 5 to 10 points, but I would say maybe a couple of points each. And you don't want to do that. And it's a distraction. And like I said, you're going to have people that, you have to have the pro-life movement or whatever that mobilizes to vote as well. And Trump is right about that part of the statement. A lot of, single-issue abortion voters likely may have just stayed home because they feel as if the issue was won. And that is also an issue. You have to keep pushing for more. You're going to have to keep demanding more. You're going to have to stay energized. And, Trump is right about that part of the statement. We didn't see that energy in full. But what can I say? Up next, we have Real Texan Politics says, don't forget member chats. I won't. Let's see if we could pull up member chats. I don't even see them. I don't think I've been I don't know. They're not showing for me. Let me see if we have member chats. Member chats are not showing up. Interesting. All right, let me see. Maybe they'll load. Maybe they will, but I can't see them. I'm looking in chat. I think I missed. They definitely did exist. I just can't see them for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, we'll resume super chats. If you sent a member chat, just at me when we're closing the stream with what you said, and I'll read it. I can tell who's a member and who's not a member, obviously. So let's see. David Fallows says people are literally saying Trump isn't pro-life because of his comment. Truthfully, legally, it's harder to argue for exceptions. Yeah, and I'm not saying that you have to tout that. I'm just saying don't run on that or make controversial statements if you don't need to. It's different if you're running in Kentucky than if you're running in Michigan. Because a lot of people in Michigan don't care about the issue. Even people that voted for Trump, they didn't vote for Trump because Trump was a standard pro-life Republican. They didn't. Obviously, like the diehard pro-choice or pro-abortion, pro-infanticide people are not going to vote for Trump regardless. But like a lot of people just are ambivalent about it, and if that's the key issue, they're just not going to turn out. But if trade and immigration are the key issues, they're more likely to. That's the way it is. I'm trying to lower the amount of abortions in this country. We also have to be intelligent about how we navigate this. So, Nick H says, are there any issues at all where you think DeSantis is stronger than Trump? He's younger. That's a bonus. But Trump still arguably has more charisma at his age, even though he's not the Trump he used to be. That's the way I see it. In terms of issues, people will say COVID, but Trump and DeSantis had pretty much the same stance. Like DeSantis still locked down. Trump supported initial lockdown. Trump criticized Kemp for reopening early. DeSantis reopened after. And again, that was probably like the popular position at the time. And both have supported and promoted the jab. Both of them have. Trump arguably has been closer to its creation because he was in power. He wanted to take credit because it's like an ego thing for him. But DeSantis has told people to get it. You could say, well, his state's older, it's different, but like at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter. The optics of it are no different, and I'm not gonna pretend that DeSantis is like a lot better on the issue than Trump is either, because both had caved to Fauci at times, and both have supported some of these COVID measures and including the jab. So that's the way I see it. And people might get mad, but whatever. I don't know any issues. I mean, maybe you could find some. I mean, DeSantis isn't like touting the alphabet stuff the way Trump is. I'll give DeSantis that. I think that DeSantis, in terms of some of that stuff, but he hasn't been in the national spotlight either. And I think Trump has been very weak on the alphabet issues as well. But I think it's part of his New York nature. I'm not excusing it though, but it's always been a flaw that we've had to live with. And it's an issue. But it's not like DeSantis is, I mean, he's targeted the woke parts of education, but even then, what did his bill do that he got signed? Like, you just can't talk about gay sex until 4th grade now. It's like, okay. I mean, that's a step in the right direction. Not knocking the bill. It's a good bill. Nobody should oppose it, but, got to demand a little bit more than that, of course. Billy Walker says, can anyone beat Bob Casey if he runs again? I mean, if the presidential ticket's strong enough in Pennsylvania, but I don't know if it's going to happen this time. Because if that's the case and you put a Republican up, they're going to run in line. I don't think Casey is going to outrun the Democrat Biden by like any more than 3. It's not going to happen. But is Biden going to lose Pennsylvania by more than 3? I doubt it, so I'll put it as lean D for now. I don't think Casey's going to win by like 15 again, or even 10, because we're more polarized. It's a presidential year, but I don't think we're beating Bob Casey. I just don't. Lifo Foley says, will the rural Midwest ever vote like the rural South? I mean, Indiana, you're already seeing that to a large degree, even parts of Ohio, so I'd say yes. Give it enough time. If Republicans know what they're doing, which they don't. Exactly says, isn't it crazy that Zeldin lost New York by less than the population exodus in the last few years? Obviously, not all were voting age, but still. Yeah, I mean, some of those people leaving were liberal too, so you'd have to do the math or whatever. But honestly, Hochul's pretty strong for an upstater. I mean, like, I will say that, like, to be an upstater, like, she underperformed, but there were counties that I believe were won by the 2018 nominee who was from upstate that she actually ended up winning or overperforming him in. So, like, it's true, but I'm not entirely sure that like that's like the way that it was. But it is true that upstate you did see some interesting stuff there. But it's Hochul's from upstate. The upstaters have pride. They break tables. I mean, these people are crazy. Real Texan Politics is also RIP Diamond from Diamond and Silk. Yeah, that is true. I heard about that. Sad news. Sad news. But yeah. All right. Now, I guess we'll wait and see if you guys have any more super chats. Who sent the member chats in that I didn't exactly get to? So I can get to those as well. Because they're not showing up for me. I don't know why, but they're just not showing up. So, what if I look into memberships, I could see. No. Doesn't show. All right. Let's see. Real Texan Politics said it'll be funny to see how much Weinbaum resist lib money Lucas Kuntz gets since he's running against Hawley. Yeah, they said he would like have a chance or like he would beat Epic Eric. And I know that Eric Greitens would have probably underperformed vastly because of the scandal, even though he was proven innocent and that he was underfunded. But it's like, come on. Seriously? This guy's like a Bernie, bro, full on, which again, you could say Fetterman was to an extent, but he was arguably far more gone than Fetterman was and a much worse fit for his state. So, yeah, but they really treated, and a lot of people you wouldn't anticipate would have treated Greitens as bad as they did, but they treated him horribly. They called him a rapist. He was proven innocent. He was proven innocent. So, regardless if he would have won or not, doesn't matter. But yeah, it is true. These people will continue their nonsensical grift. They will say, oh, these people are going to win all these safe red states, and it's not going to happen. Like the Bernie bro nominee for Senate in West Virginia in 2020 got like 25% of the voters. It was ridiculous. So we got to focus on retaking the Senate, holding the House, get those redistricting lawsuits going, which I might talk about in tomorrow's video, and we'll go from there. Nick H says, what is wrong with Minnesota's voters? I don't know. Like, I will think about, I've thought about it for years, and I guess they're just broken. It's a broken anomaly. I don't know what goes on there. These people had their cities burned to the ground by this angry left-wing mob. They rewarded them because they agreed with that. They agreed with the mob. They made excuses for the mob, made excuses for their actions. Like, they're just, I guess, white liberals. A surprising amount of them. Same thing with Madison, Wisconsin to a large degree. Olivia Williams says, will Lake Winter appeal and can she be governor? Probably not, given how the first few lawsuits have gone. Now, I will say, maybe Hobbs, the first misstep, recall Hobbs, maybe we'll see what happens there. But that's probably going to be the most likely pathway for Lake to become governor, would be a recall. Would she win it? Would depend how Hobbs screws up. It would have to be a really decent screw up in order to get the turnout to get that to happen. But I don't know. Kind of wish Lake ran in Iowa instead of Arizona because I know that she would have won easily. But at the same time, saving Arizona is a lot more important than winning Iowa. I know she lived in both or whatever, but no, Arizona, like, I have no regrets about that nomination. No regrets. Robson was awful. She would have probably lost. Yee may have won, but would not have won by 11. Wow, she won number cruncher over some no-name who received no funding by 11 points. Wow, she's like this electoral juggernaut. Like, give me a break. Like, don't get me wrong, she is not, like, polarizing. She would have probably gotten enough funding to beat Hobbs by like a couple of points, but I mean, you just get the same old mediocre policies. We need change. We need warriors as well. Lake was somebody who you could maybe say, well, she could have done this differently. Either way, we know Maricopa County's Maricopa County, which we knew beforehand, but either way, Republicans need to understand how to approach the election system better. But now Arizona's gone. And part of that can be blamed on that as well. Democrats play to win. They have election month. Republicans say, oh, we're going to vote at the last minute. What happens? Oh, well, you know, certain things on E-Day that are not anticipated sometimes may arise. And some people might just be standing in line. They're like, screw this, I'm leaving. And the margin of victory for the Democrat may very well be low to the point where it's like, okay, well, if you approach this differently, it wouldn't be this way. And you'd be able to probably win by a few points. Like, the polls were wrong. I get that. But I feel as if it is a turnout game. And certain people who were apathetic that would have still maybe voted for Lake if Republicans got their act together, like, it would not have mattered. Republicans would have won by a few points. Like, the polls said that Lake would have won by a few points. That, again, I'm not blaming Carrie Lake herself for that, but it's the whole apparatus of the GOP that doesn't know how to get things done. They don't. So, yep, that's the way it is. I think we're going to end this stream. Thank you all for tuning in. Like the stream before you go, and I will see you guys with a video tomorrow. I'll do a website video for exclusive members as well. And I'll probably be back here with a stream later this week, either Friday, maybe, probably not Saturday, but maybe Friday night. We'll see how it goes. But I will see you guys soon. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle out.